everybody. Sure you guys haven't been talking about FAFSA enough. Let's double down here. Expecting a fairly big crowd tonight, right? I think or today. I guess it could be tonight if you're in Europe, if you're any of our European fans. But yeah, give us 1 minute and then we will do some brief introductions or reintroductions, and then we'll get cooking here. Danny, what's up, man? You not sick of me yet? See, Danny Pegg was the school counselor in Boston that we were on site for at Codman Academy
Oh,
doing
awesome. Awesome.
some FAFSAs in the flesh. We still got two more that we got to troubleshoot, but we got, I think, over 2/3 of the senior class submitted on
Oh
Friday.
man, that's amazing.
It's a big accomplishment. Um,
Yeah, that's huge for those kids and those families. That's huge.
Brought some relief, I think. Brought some
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
all right, awesome. We'll again, fair amount of content to cover here. But I do want to make sure that for those of you that are new to us, my name is Matt Carpenter. This is my colleague Peg Keogh. We're College Aid Pro. I'm one of the founders here. Been doing this for 20 years, actually. I think it occurred to me when I was sitting in the cafeteria at Codman Academy last Friday. 2025 will be the 20th class I've kind of guided through this process, which is amazing to say, but grateful to be doing it still this year. Every year comes with its own challenges. This year's exasperated, I would say. With obviously plenty of things, but FAFSA being Exhibit A. So we're going to walk you through just kind of everything that we've seen, and we've seen. I'd like to think that we've seen it all with the hundreds of FAFSAs we've kind of had our hands in, but maybe not. We're still seeing surprises. I mean, the theme and what you'll hear us say more than once is just like we're all at the mercy of this system. Students, parents, counselors, colleges, we're all at the mercy of it. And really, a ton of it is out of our control. None of these are going to be processed until the end of January, whatever that means, right? That's it. That's as precise of a date as we have. So, the constant messaging you're hearing from us that I think you should echo in your high schools is that it's okay, guys. This thing is broken for everybody. There's no quick fix. So long as you're kind of doing your best to get in there and get it through, it's okay. Schools are going to be more conscientious with deadlines this year. And again, we can't make any corrections until these things process, which again we know is a week-ish, right? And again, just hopefully we can be just kind of your source of truth here. We are all over this every second, probably more than we care to be, but that's the cross we bear, Peggy. So, Peg Keogh, for those of you that are again meeting Peg or myself for the first time, this is the fairy godmother of financial aid. So you can't be in better hands than with Peg. I'm out here in Boston. Peg's out there in Seattle. And Peg, if you want to say hi, we can.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I need to get a hat and a wand one of these days and just show up.
It would be appropriate, yes.
Um, yeah, this is frustrating. I already answered one question in the chat, and we'll bring up in case everybody there are glitches. But my background, I've been doing this for over a decade. I have two kids. I went through with it, so I always tell people that's probably my best credential, not my schooling and not my own business and being a cap. It's really I've been a parent. I've been through this, not this, not the new and better FAFSA that we're trying to help people through now. But yeah, it's just the best thing, and I use this language all the time for years with parents, like take a deep breath, it's all going to work out, and with the students too. And this is just another bump in the road of this whole college journey. Hopefully it's a bump for the class of 2024 and it'll be in the rearview mirror for the junior, sophomores, freshmen, and next year we'll be off and running. But in the meantime, we're happy to be here to kind of go over some of the kind of how this works And then we will talk through, Matt's seen a bunch of glitches, I've seen glitches, trying to get, actually I have a sister who's involved in this on a different side than me. So I'm kind of tapping her. What is FSA saying? We're just trying to get to the root of some of this stuff so that we can help you and help your family. So I will, I'll share my screen here and I will let you, take the wheel here, Matt. Yeah, and if you have questions, put them in the Q&A versus the chat. Matt and I will look in the Q&A. Just gives us one place, and if you want to be anonymous, you can be anonymous as well.
Yeah, and please fire away, fire away with any and all questions. It doesn't matter how specific or one-off it may seem. I think these are a great place to hopefully have those questions answered, so you can bring that back to the families that are maybe losing some sleep over this stuff. And I did see it ironic timing that I did see a question here of a lot of the families getting this SAI cannot be calculated kind of alert, if you will. I literally just shot a video talking through that we're going to put out on our socials this afternoon. And I think Peg's going to shoot a similar one later. It's the same messaging, guys. This is a totally common glitch this year. It's incredibly likely that unlikely rather that you did anything wrong, so to speak. This is just a common glitch. We have some kind of best guesses connecting the dots because we've seen this a ton on our end too of what might be causing this glitch, but we're not even going to speculate, and it doesn't really matter. The takeaway is just like, you're fine, guys. The FAFSA has been processed. We might need to go in there and make some type of correction or confirm something, and we'll do that once it processes again late January. Okay. So some kind of higher level stuff that again, we weren't sure if it made sense to kind of share this with you school counselors. But when we talk to parents, this is something that we just like to reinforce, especially for families that are, I think, like not even thinking about financial aid. They have enough resources or whatever that it's just not on their radar. But why should they still be submitting the FAFSA? And these are just some of the big reasons why. A lot of people disqualify themselves because they just assume they're not going to get anything, and their colleagues, their neighbors didn't get anything, and they heard the process is a big pain, so why bother, right? And quite literally, millions of families leave money on the table for that reason each year. Some colleges require the FAFSA and or the CSS profile if you want to be considered for merit. We always talk about NYU, one of the most, I think it was third in applications received last year. If you want to be considered for merit at NYU, regardless of your financial aid eligibility, you got to submit your FAFSA and your CSS profile. Okay. Obviously, that's not every school, but that's another reason why you might consider doing this, even if you're not applying for need-based aid. And in most cases, even if something changes in the future, right? Where, hey, I'm not applying for financial aid this year, but I'm going to when my kid's a junior, because their younger kid's going to be in school as well. Most of these colleges are going to say, too bad, you didn't apply freshman year. That means you signed up to pay full sticker price for all 4 years. And kind of related to that is the fact that things change. And if we want to appeal, be it this year or in subsequent years, most colleges are going to say, have you applied for financial aid each year, right? If you haven't, we're probably not going to consider your appeal. One of Peg and I's colleagues, Mike Hinderman, he's the director of scholarships at the University of Oklahoma. Their policy, and they're not on an island here, is that they won't hear any type of appeals, merit-based or otherwise, again, until the FAFSA has been submitted. And that's just kind of policy. So you're just hedging, okay? And the other one that I recommend, again, probably especially to families that have a lot of resources, is that, and even to everybody, right? I shouldn't say just then because it's to everybody, but as probably most of you know, we complete the FAFSA, we're eligible to receive the federal direct student loan, right? Up to $27,000 over the course of 4 years of college. There isn't a better student loan program out there. And we can only get that if we complete the FAFSA, right? So if you want your kids to have any skin in the game, if you need your kids to have any skin in the game, you have to do the FAFSA for that. And even if you don't, it still makes sense to take advantage of that and pay it off for them. So from where we sit, it's like you'd have to talk us out of why it's not a good idea to at least submit the FAFSA here for all the upside.
Gotta go on mute. On. unmute myself. Okay, so I'm sure all of you know this, but sometimes it bears repeating. This is something we tell parents all the time. They need to get their FSA IDs. It takes a few days for it to process, and I've had a few parents that are, stressing because it's taking longer and they feel like they need to get in there. So if you have any students that haven't done this and their parents, they definitely need to do it. And I'm going to talk in a minute about who needs to be contributing. There was a good question somebody just put in that I answered about the family. Well, you know what? I'll bring it up when I get to the slide because it's a good story to kind of solidify who should be contributing, because that can get super confusing with all these changes. But people need to get in there. They need to get this FSA ID. Be really careful all the information they're putting in. Make sure it's accurate, because it is going to move into the FAFSA. Each part of the FAFSA, that information will move in there and populate. So FAFSA is live. And I was just saying to Matt before, I had changed this slide. I'm not going to change it back. But, the government came out a while ago, FSA, and said, okay, we're available now. We're not closing. We're not doing maintenance. It used to be 8 to 8. Now, in theory, it's 24/7. And I said the soft launch is over. That was me like doing that. I just got an email from them this morning. They're still calling it a soft launch, but it's supposed to be live 24/7. They don't have, 12 hours a day that it's open, and the rest of the time they're trying to fix these glitches. So a little nomenclature, whatever. It should be 24/7. So when your families go on, the button should work. They should be able to get in. As Matt already mentioned, and somebody put the question in the chat and I answered, and he brought it up, there are glitches. And some of the most common glitches are one, and we're going to tell you what we feel is best practice to do this. Doesn't mean there won't be a glitch, but fingers crossed. There's glitches of the student goes in, starts theirs, invites the parent signs it, can't get back into the students. And then it says it's incomplete. We can't give you an SAI because you didn't sign, but the student couldn't sign. We've seen that. And then they get that email that doesn't say estimated SAI equals and gives a number. So that's a very common glitch. I put in the chat. They know about it. They're just not saying, hey, there'll be a resolution in 48 hours. It's just they know about it and they're working on it. Different families are going to have different looking FAFSAs potentially. It depends on the situation. Most families aren't going to see a lot of questions around income. They're going to be asked about family size. Is it the same as the 2022 return? They're going to be asked about, did you get a foreign income tax exclusion? This is for expats. Most people are going to put 0. But there's not going to be adjusted gross income and what were your earnings and what did you pay in line 22 of your tax return for federal income tax. All those questions that we're used to seeing, you're not going to see. All of that is automatically moving for most families from the IRS into the FAFSA. And that's why people are logging into their part of the FAFSA and they're contributing and consenting. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's what they're consenting to for their federal tax information to move into the FAFSA. And then federal student aid is going to use that on the FAFSA so that they can inform the schools as well as different other entities that they're allowed to share it with for the students' benefit. And that's all in the agreement that they're going to sign. They can read through the whole thing and then they have to hit agree or whatever it is to move forward in the FAFSA. So I know some, people love to talk to family and friends all around this about submitting these forms or not, like Matt talked about, but they might not be exactly the same between two families. So people shouldn't think there's something wrong with theirs if they hear, something different from a family member or friend as far as the format and questions that were asked. If somebody does have a glitch, that glitch we're talking about, this big one that's pretty widespread, the best thing is if I were doing it, it's like try and go back in, see if it'll let you do it. I've had glitches, other ones where you get an error message when a parent would submit the other parent's information and then the mom went back in the next day and she was able to complete it. They must have done something on the back end that allowed that. So checking, not every hour and freaking out about it, but checking in is probably a good a good practice, because who knows, they could get something fixed before they announce it. If they announce anything, please follow us. We're on Instagram, Facebook. As Matt said, he shot a little video. We will keep our audience informed as quickly as we know anything. So the timeline, Matt already mentioned this. The colleges are not going to get any information until the end of January at the earliest. So it's a good thing to tell parents. I have seen some deadlines. I had a dad freaked out last week, and rightly so. He wrote me because we had a meeting, and he said, Peg, the deadline's January 15th, and my FSA hasn't been approved yet. And I thought, there's no way a college is doing that. Went to their website. Sure enough, it was front and center, the deadline. We called the schools, and I'll let you guys know because you're working with everybody. Johns Hopkins was the school. Had a colleague call them, and they said, yeah, we just want parents to be proactive. This is not going to hurt aid eligibility. We know we know what's going on with the FAFSA. And I kind of want to be like, why are you doing that? You're just creating even more stress for parents. So at Johns Hopkins, it's okay. But if other schools have deadlines, I would tell parents, if there's a deadline, do your best to get completely through. And I'll show you in a few minutes, like once it's completed, as far as FSA is concerned, an email will come out, even if it says SAI not calculated because missing a signature, it should have a process date. So that's the family's proof. Hey, I gave my 100% to get this puppy in, and because of the tech glitches, it's not completed. But then their what is covered, right? So that they submitted it if a school's going to say, hey, you missed a deadline. Because as we all know, deadlines, you miss a deadline, it could really hurt for getting financial aid if they're eligible. The FAFSA submission summary, which is the new name for the SAR, again, not available for the student to log in under their FAFSA account and see till the end of January. So everything is delayed. And based on what's happened in this process since this legislation was passed, if it was even later than that, I wouldn't be surprised, but that's the best case scenario as far as timelines. So what information your families are going to need to get in there? All of their non-retirement asset information. So 529s, investments, and if they have real estate, that's not their primary home, the equity in that real estate. And that's something where a lot of parents are booking time to talk to us about. How do I value my real estate? They want to be honest, of course, but they don't want to overvalue. If they have secondary properties, sorry guys, and definitely primary home is not on this form. That's a CSS profile. Checking, savings, everything else is on the table except for all the retirement, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs. As I said earlier, most people aren't going to need their tax return sitting in front of them. But if they fall into one of those exceptions, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, then they are going to be prompted and they'll need their tax return. But most people are not going to need that. It's just going to automatically move. If you have family where the parents, either one of them or both of them, are business owners, the value of their business, there's no exclusion anymore. So even a mom and pop shop, no employees besides the two of them, they're going to have to put a value. That's another thing that people are talking to us about. Because again, you want to be honest, but some businesses, to sell them, they don't have any value. So people are going to feel like they have to put a number and could potentially overvalue their business, and that's going to raise their SAI. And then of course they're going to need the list of colleges to plug in there. So, and this year up to 20. So that's great. I don't have all your background, but I'm thinking most kids are not applying to more than 20 schools, so that they don't have to get into resubmitting the FAFSA later, which is a great change.
I'll be curious though. I wonder I bet you we have some that are over 20 in here. What's the record so far? Curious to hear. I think I heard 28. I don't think we hit 30 yet this year, but curious if anybody.
Well, I'm thinking in those situations that might be more parent driven and student driven than counselor.
Oh yeah, I don't think
but
it's
I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong.
No, no, I don't think it's them insisting on, I don't imagine.
Yeah, sometimes, people do what they want to do and it can get a little crazy, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Three over 25, 3 over 25. That's a big number.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, then they're going to have to submit and then they're going to have to wait, which is going to create, and if they weren't able to successfully submit, now that I'm talking about this, Matt, like, what does a deadline mean for that? They can't resubmit. So if you have a deadline of February 3rd at XYZ school and they need to submit with more schools, they won't have the time. So I think the talk track with parents is the colleges are going to have to give some grace this year. They're just going to have to. And parents might have to show up and advocate hard for it at certain schools, but they're really going to need to do that because parents and families, like they're just at the mercy of this system right now and the tech, which some people have gotten through. Did I get a little shaky, Matt?
No, you're doing okay.
Okay,
You're
okay,
talking
great.
about some people.
Some people have gotten through seamlessly. I've had several that I've been on, but we're having the glitches, like I said. So basically, I tell people go to FAFSA.gov. It's going to take you to studentaid.gov/da-da-da-da-da. It's easy for people to remember. Click on Start New Form. What we recommend for best practice is log in with the students, start the student one. It's the student's FAFSA. So student FSA ID password. You can't get in anymore with social security number and date of birth and say you're a parent. So you're either going to start with the parents or start with the students. We strongly recommend start with the student, log in, and then this is the flow. And you see there aren't as many sections, and this student financial section is pretty short. Same with the parent if the data is moving. So there's some personal circumstances questions, pretty straightforward. A lot of the info moves in from the FSA ID that was provided. And I'll show you this invite in a minute, but it will pop up and it will say you need to invite your parent, your guardian, whatever, whatever that family situation is to your FAFSA. So they're going to fill out the information, click send invite, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you see here, student demographics, student financials, all the colleges get entered in the student FAFSA, and then they sign. What we recommend you do, invite the parent and go ahead and finish that, right? Sign. The FAFSA is not complete because the contributors have to do their thing, but the student has signed it. That piece of it is done, okay? So who's a contributor? This is where I had a question where somebody wrote in and said the parents are remarried and the FAFSA is prompting the stepdad to contribute. And she said, is that right? I thought if they were married, that wouldn't be the case. Well, you're right, but it depends. So let's go through these different scenarios. If parents are married, remarried, or unmarried living together, and they didn't file married filing jointly in 2022, because that's the prior year, then they're both contributors. So that's what I wrote back to the person that asked the question. Were they married in 2022 and did they file married filing jointly? And the counselor doesn't have that level of detail. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because if they weren't married and mom filed head of household, well, absolutely, that stepdad is going to need to be a contributor. Because if you think about it, mom is going on, she can't consent for her new spouse to move income because it wasn't on her tax return. So there is some logic here. So that's why that goes that way. If you look at the second bullet, based on what I'm saying, makes a lot of sense. Some married people file married filing separately for different reasons. That's two separate tax returns. So both of those parents are contributors, and it's going to prompt each of them to do their own part of the FAFSA. They're both going to need FSA IDs and passwords to log in. Makes sense. The second one, if people are married, happily married, they've been happily married for 10 years, whatever, married filing jointly in prior year, married filing jointly now, one parent will be invited. And I will show you in a minute. Don't put the other parent's information because that can cause errors. And that parent's going to consent and that info is going to pull for both parents. Now, I said earlier, there are some situations where the family will be prompted to add adjusted gross income, earnings, all that fun stuff. And my fourth bullet is probably going to be the most common time that happens, is when they're currently divorced or separated, but in the prior year, they filed married filing jointly. So the FAFSA doesn't want to move married filing jointly in there because that's not the current custodial parent's reality. That's going to inflate income potentially, right? So that parent has to manually enter their tax information for the prior year. And then when they get to the assets part, make sure that, and this is another opportunity where they should probably talk to us, right? Get some help to do this correctly. This is what I used to do for all these years in the past with parents and say, no, don't use DRT, do this. Well, now it's going to kick them out because they can't move it over. So hopefully that gives you a good framework. A lot of families, if they're divorced in 2022, that's not going to matter. It's just if the current situation and the tax filing status is different than prior year, that's going to kick them. They don't have to do anything. If the form's working correctly, should automatically prompt them to answer the income questions. So divorced parents, I know we've gone over this with this audience, but it bears repeating. Spend 30 seconds on it. The custodial parent definition has been changed from here going forward. It's the parent that provided the most financial support on a year look back. So if the parent's submitting next week, it's a year look back. So we're telling parents, hey, if you're 50-50, if you can work together, have one parent spend a little bit more on that child. You're being honest, you're following the rules, and you're putting your best foot forward on who the custodial parent is. The government deliberately, I mean, maybe it wasn't deliberate because maybe they didn't know, but they left it as a gray area. You know, the back, if you're 50-50, the legislation says the parent that makes more is the custodial parent. But in my mind, don't be 50-50, like spend a little more on soccer or whatever it happens to be. This is another area where parents can use support from us because they're just like, how can we do this and be honest, and to put their best foot forward. So it's a good planning opportunity. So the responsibilities of the contributor, I think it's an unfortunate choice of words because it's loaded. Contributor, everybody hears and thinks I have to contribute money when that's not the case. They need to complete their portion of the FAFSA. They need to provide this consent and approval like I've talked about. They're not responsible to pay a penny of their child's college. And I know this could be an issue if you've got parents that are just like, I don't want to pay, and this makes me feel like I have to. It absolutely doesn't. But if they need to submit and consent and they don't, no aid, no federal, no state. If it's a CSS school, maybe they'll give money out of their endowment because they use the CSS for that. I don't know, but they definitely can't do state, federal. There's no direct student loans. It's just if parents can just understand you're not responsible financially. So this is what it looks like when you're in the student's FAFSA, and this is the page that says invite your contributors. This could be different for one where it's just married filing jointly, one parent, they put it here. You might not be able to see it depending on how big your monitor is, but they should have made this bigger. But it says, do not fill out this section unless otherwise instructed. If parents put mom and dad there, it's all going to go red. I've had a parent do that. They deleted it. It let us go forward. Sometimes it causes issues. So don't only put the parent that got the FSA ID if it's married filing jointly and is going to sit with the student and go through this. Very important not to put both pieces of information. Later in the FAFSA, it's going to ask for that other parent. There you put it in, but that's not part of the consenting. This is what the email looks like that the parent will get. It's good for 45 days. I don't think anybody's going to sit on it for 45 days or more. If they do, the parent can reinvite. I mean, the student can reinvite. But this is where we recommend, this is how we recommend the parent goes in. Because the parent technically can go to FAFSA.gov and log in with their FSA ID and password. It's not wrong, but this flow seems to be better. And when they get in there, the student information is already populated that the parent did with the student already. So less chance for error of entering information. It's just easier. And that's the flow we recommend that they follow. So then once the parent's in there, they're going to do their demographics, their financials, and most of it will automatically move. And it doesn't say it. It's not like the DRT. Remember, it would say, you can move your money from the IRS. So you either did it. If you said, no, I declined, the next page said, are you sure you don't want to? There's none of that. There's no choice. The income questions don't come, and it's just going to happen behind the scenes. So some people have written and said, what's going on? It never said anything. It's going to. That's the way it's set up, and that's why you're consenting. And then they sign, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they sign. Then this student's FAFSA is complete because all the contributors have signed. And and let me just, this is the last little piece before I show you the email. The main thing that is going to pop up for most people, there are a few people, depending on their adjusted gross income, there's some families that won't have to enter assets if their adjusted gross income is less than 60,000 and they don't fall. There's some exceptions. They have to have some other things. I won't bore you with all the details to fit into that, but just so you know, some people, low income people, they might not see this page on the parent or the student side, but this should seem familiar to you if you've done these in the past. Checking, savings, current net worth of investments, including real estate, no primary home. 529s go in there that are owned by the parent and only the parent that's submitting. So if it's a divorced family, if the non-custodial parent owns a 529, that doesn't go in. It's only the custodial parent, and it's only for the student in question here, not siblings. That's a new change for the better. So if they have 3 accounts, only the balance for the student that they're doing the FAFSA for. That all goes in here. No retirement accounts. And then here's that net worth of business or farm. And this has to be answered. So this, as I said earlier, is a place where very much could be worth parents to book an hour with one of our experts, because we can get in the weeds on it. Whenever we present to parents, they're all over the Q&A. How should I value my business? And we just can't tell them on a Q&A. We really need to understand their situation. So that's the parent and student asset page. I already covered deadlines. Each college is going to have their own deadline. I always tell parents, check the website. I know there's a lot of software programs, a lot of websites out there that say, here's the deadline, especially this year. But I say it all the time. The source of truth is really the college website, because if they change something and you miss it, then that's on you. And they don't really care that you were on another website that said it was a different deadline. And I always tell people, I know people now are just trying to get through and finish it. And I'd be in the same boat if I were still doing this for my 2 kids. But if there's a deadline, they literally need to have it in before that deadline. And I always tell people, find out all your deadlines and shoot to get it in a few days before. Because if you lose power out here in Washington, we have windstorms and power goes out, right? Or your internet just goes down, right? So then people aren't waiting till the last minute and then they miss a deadline. So that's kind of our suggestion there. So this is the email and this is notifications that people are getting that say we couldn't calculate your SAI, which somebody put in the chat right at the beginning. But the key information here is there's a submission date. That's the proof that you submitted it. Even if they're saying it's not complete, that family did their best to submit it. That's on FSA that it's not complete. That's not on the family. And it's also going to have a DRN number, which that's a common thing from the past. And then the estimated student aid index. Hopefully that's on there. If it was able to go through this one that I captured for one of my families, it went through. So I was able to capture one, but if there's language around there about not being able to, like we said, you could go in and try and do it. So that's the flow. Hopefully that's helpful, kind of give you an overview and best practice in our mind about how to help families move through this. So I will let you take over here, Matt.
Yeah, thanks. And you know what I forgot to do at the beginning, among other things, but we are doing this presentation specifically for our high school families, parents and students. We are doing one tonight at 7 Eastern time. I'm going to put these in the chat.
Oh, yeah, good call. Yeah, we're doing one tonight and
About a
one,
week from tonight.
it's a
So,
week from tonight. It's not, it's a week from, yeah,
oh, one.
whatever, because we're doing two next week and I'll have to look at my calendar, which is which, but
No, it's yeah, 124 is the other one we're doing again, kind of specific for our high school
for high
partners.
school partners. Okay.
You are welcome to invite your
Yeah, and
par-
we're gonna cover a lot of this with them so that they can hear it, I think parents have found it very beneficial. The more they know, just like everything in this process, even though they're not able to submit it or there's challenges, at least they understand what's going on and how it all works. And some people might not have gone in yet, so
Yeah. And obviously they get to ask their questions. Here's what happened with me, and here's what's going on with our family. Um, So please share those out. And we also we have a little bit more at the top that we share with families, knowing that they don't, we're kind of making some assumptions with you all that there's a big foundation of knowledge around how this whole thing works and how the FAFSA fits into it and all that. So that I think it's more comprehensive. Let's put it that way. And I think also our talk track is with the assumption that these are parents that don't know what the heck they're doing and are completely overwhelmed. Our delivery and our content is a little bit different, but obviously the foundation and and what we're the goals are very similar here. So please share those. And we're happy to again make sure that your families are getting answers to their questions. And same as you all, right? As soon as so long as they register, if they can't make it live, they'll get the recording and all that. And hopefully have some resources to go to with their questions. So this is just kind of an overview, right? I won't belabor this. You've heard probably most of these bullet points already, right? Obviously, the big change this year with divorced and separated families. We're trying to see that as an opportunity where can we get strategic and give ourselves some more financial aid and still be within the rules of the game here. That's what we want to help families figure out. A big hit to families with more than one kid at college at once. It's important to say this is the federal rule, right? And I think it's going to apply at most colleges that use the federal methodology, but colleges have the option. And I think some private colleges might not. And schools that use the CSS profile, not all of them have made a decision yet, which is crazy. But most CSS profile schools, right, especially our most competitive ones, right, the Ivies and MIT and Stanford and such, they're still going to have the sibling discount, right? So they're not changing at all. And then again, the other big change around business owners, that's a huge one that is just quite frankly not getting enough press. And I think is going to be the most negatively impactful on kind of at scale this year for families, which stinks. So we're trying to educate families there. And just like Peg did, just make sure they are not hurting themselves unnecessarily, making sure they're not afraid to put zero as a value of their business when that's appropriate. And it's appropriate more often than not. And then we talk about some of the wins, right? I mean, the biggest wins being more money for the families that need it the most. A bigger pot, larger thresholds. It's just a challenge of the form did get easier, which is great, but man alive, did it get harder to access, right? That's the biggest problem. It's harder to get on this thinking form. Once we get on there, they did a good job, I think, of making it more user friendly, but it's kind of it feels right now kind of like one step forward, two steps back in a lot of ways, but I'm sure we'll muscle through it. And again, good news about 529s, and I got a great question around this. They're going to be able to make this correction to only include 529s for the relevant student. We just can't make corrections until late January. And now our 401k contributions don't hurt us, which is great. And the last thing that we talk about, and Peggy, you can probably go to this last slide here before I share some kind of parting thoughts. And, we talk about this all the time, and it's some of our favorite things to do. And we do entire presentations around the appeal process itself. But I think it's going to be especially important this year, especially important for business owners, especially important for divorced and separated families, especially important for families that have more than one kid at college at once, right? There's going to be some families next year that are going to get the rug pulled out from underneath them. You know, maybe it's twins that were both at a federal methodology school and they were getting meaningful discounts because of the fact that they had two kids in school at once. And all of a sudden that goes away and they get no need-based financial aid. So again, you know, it's not like they're grandfathered in, they're not. So, but this should be a huge emphasis for appeals. You know, what we get all the time is since this prior tax year, we get it. Class 2024 is using 22 income. But what if 22 income was pretty good and 23 was terrible, or 24 looks really looks bad? You know, again, all these different grounds that we have for appealing, and there's just a method to that madness. And most families don't even know it's a thing, right? Most families just have the mindset of it, like whatever a college offers us, that's the deal come hell or high water. So we just want to educate around that as well. And so that's yeah, and again, here's just a kind of re-emphasizing that yes, the federal formula changed, but it doesn't mean that schools have to follow it. And so again, we're just kind of flagging this to say it doesn't mean that we can no longer get a bit any break because we're sending more than one of our kids to school at once.
Yeah, and this is huge because for their endowment money, they can take it into account. And there is a question on the FAFSA, so the colleges will know. And what I think is a lot of colleges will follow the federal methodology, but then if families reach out, and this is something we can help with, and say, hey, you know, we realize you didn't take this into account, and they need to know their SAIs with one in school to even know if the award's any good, right? Or how the college is doing it, and to reach out in the right way and have a conversation with them. It could, because people that make some pretty nice money when you get two in school really, really changes SAIs like in a meaningful way. And a lot of parents think, well, I make so much money, and they make nice money, but colleges are so expensive now, and it's that cost of attendance minus that SAI. And if that SAI gets below 92,000, ooh, all of a sudden they have need-based aid, even though they're making some nice money. So I always tell parents, you know, grab as much endowment money as you can. Don't take it from your checking, savings, your portfolio, right? Don't take it from your retirement nest egg. So this is really exciting, and the government really called it out, made it super clear, like colleges can do this. They get examples of how the colleges could do it. But I don't know that the colleges are going to put that on their website and let all the families know they can do this. That's the thing about appealing, is reaching out and advocating for yourself. In a lot of schools, we have a lot of great stories around, really good success stories around it. So.
Yep, no doubt about it. Absolutely. So let me take just a couple minutes to make sure that everybody understands, especially the newbies here, of a couple different ways that we partner with schools, with school districts, etc. I always articulate, and by the way, I'm putting my link in here because please, if there's any intrigue at all, I would love to hear about what your school is doing currently and see how we can support you. And I see a bunch of our schools that we partner with on here right now, which is great. Our kind of the OGs, our groupies that are always with us. But we look at it like there's kind of two ecosystems. One, similar to what we're doing today, right? We like to consider ourselves like a back office, a support system, a sounding board, whatever, of school counselors, right? So we do these every other week, and it's usually 1 week we'll just talk about a specific subject matter, FAFSA today. 2 weeks from now, more of an open grab bag Q&A. Bring your questions, and you know, we'll be prepared to answer those. We have a dedicated email just for school counselors. It's counselor@collegeaidpro.com, right? That's just for you all. We have eyes on that 24 during business hours, and we're very responsive. So that's a great resource. Again, if you feel like you get a question or a really wonky situation and you would love to, again, have our eyes on it, you'll find, and I think your peers, colleagues will tell you, we're really responsive there. And then we're a support system for students and families that are going through this process. And we do that one of two ways. One of them is education. So similar to these FAFSA presentations, we all year round, we talk about what is the pain point, at this time. So January FAFSA, February will be, private scholarships. March, we'll talk about understanding award letters and appealing. In May, we'll talk about how to pay the bill and how to borrow. And in that springtime, we'll start getting the class 2025 educated and get their foundation into next year, and on we go. So we have that curriculum that, again, we partner with thousands of schools across the country, and then we have our platform. We call this like our your Naviance, your Score, your School Links, whatever you use in your school for financial aid and scholarships. So every family has their own account, so they can figure out, well, what's my SAI before I even submit my financial aid applications. It's a instant net price calculator for every school in the country. You know, incredibly accurate, right? Our projections are consistently better than the college's net price calculators. We actually did a whole presentation on that and kind of the accuracy of net price calculators in general. And then we're just trying to help families figure out, what these outcomes are going to look like, see into the future. What is this college going to cost me over 4 years next to my budget? How much am I going to have to borrow? And then the students can figure out, they don't understand what it means to borrow 70,000 versus 30,000 versus 100,000, but they do understand what it means when their first monthly payment is $1,000 or $800. We found that resonates even with teenagers, which has been kind of a great aha moment for us. Every private scholarship in the country is baked into the platform here, right? So I'm sure you're sharing, Scully and Raise Me and what's it, Fast Web and whatever, right? They're all in here, and they can search based on their particular situation, right? So I'm a resident of, California, and here's 7 pages of scholarships just for California residents, or I want to major in accounting, and here's several pages of scholarships that are just for folks that want to go be accountants, and they can filter based on what's appropriate for them. And then you guys can add to this. We do it for you on the back end, but if you have all your local scholarships too, or in your community or whatever, you can hand those over to our team, and we can get those uploaded on the back end. So, your kids can also search, at the community level, really. And these are line by line instructions through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. So we're guiding families through that process, not just the mechanics of it, but also the strategy, right? Like, we'll be like, guys, stop what you're doing, get your hands off the keyboard. Don't put your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. This is a really robust part of the technology. You guys know how confusing these financial aid award letters can be. Almost 1,000 different ways they were presented to students last year. I think it was 917 different ways. The kids can just upload the offers, or counselors or parents, right? And say, hey, I got my award to Boston University, take a picture, save the PDF. And we take those 900 different ways and allow families to compare them side by side in a really uniform way, right? One financial aid award letter to really help avoid that confusion. Don't get distracted by the plus loans in there, the work study, etc. And then we tell them, did you get a good deal? What's your likelihood that you could appeal successfully, right? And then when it comes time to pay the bill or borrow, we have all the resources you could want around that part of the process. So that's our kind of is, let's educate folks and have human beings in front of the room that can answer questions in real time. We always have 2 presenters, so whoever's not talking, similar to Peg and I, can be banging around in the Q&A. But then let's give them their own tool, so they can say, okay, I get it, cost of attendance minus SAI equals need, but what's my SAI, right? And how generous or not are the colleges that we're considering with need-based financial aid, scholarships, etc. Right? For any school in the country, if I click on any school, it has every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at projecting, well, how much is my kid going to get here? So that's a really kind of quick overview. And actually, I have this PDF, which I'll save, but you can kind of see our 2-pronged approach here: education throughout the year in real time by the top experts in the country, and then software to support that, where if school counselors want, they can have their version of the platform, similar to what you do with, again, your Naviance, your Score, etc. And families can have their own. Now, I would say there's 3 buckets, broadly speaking, in terms of how school counselors or schools or districts partner with us. The most common are schools that have 0 budget, negative budget, etc. right? There are no resources beyond what you have already. So what that looks like is these schools will say, okay, we still want our families to have the education. Please provide the curriculum for them. We want them to have a tool, a platform. Everybody is entitled to a free version of the platform, but some of the features are ring fenced. There's only 3 schools that you can put in there, for example. Um, and if families want to upgrade on their own, they can pay $149. Actually, if you partner with us, sorry, it's half price. So if you partner with us, all families can upgrade to the full version for $75. Except for free and reduced lunch families, they get it for free. So they're, they don't pay anything. They get kind of all the bells and whistles. Families that can afford it can decide if they want to opt in or just use the free version. And if they decide to opt in, they get half off. For schools that do have a budget, you can buy seats for the school for certain grades. You get your own admin panel as a school counselor. If there's any budget there, that starts as low as $2,000 for the year for the school. So that's kind of the second option, right? Obviously, the economics are completely different. You're paying a couple bucks a seat type of deal. And then the third version, if you are a Title I school, everybody gets the full version of the platform for free, the education for free, and you can also, if you want, we can set up a admin account for the school counselors, right, for your school counseling team. So we want to do that, right? We already have some great partnerships when it's possible. Like we were doing, I know Danny, if he's still on here, we were on site to actually help families with the FAFSA. Our plan is to be back there for kind of award letter appeal season. And again, we're pretty diverse geographically. So depending on where you are, we if you're a Title I school specifically, we'd love to be on premise again when it's possible. So those are kind of the 3 broad buckets. But please, I put my thanks, Peggy. I see you put the my
Yeah, I
link in.
put Matt's link in there again and also the webinar links. Yeah, so you can book a time to chat with him one-on-one.
Yeah, because we feel like, again, I'm sure we'll continue to iterate and figure out different ways to partner with different schools, but our hope is, regardless of where you're at, we can be a meaningful support system for you, right? Whether it's, your Title I or a school that has resources, or you're in the middle, which we find most to be, we can kind of fit in there somewhere. And then obviously, hopefully, I think we do a pretty good job walking the walk and being aligned with our mission, which is to help make college accessible for every family, especially those that have the biggest barrier to entry to get there. So nobody and we don't want any of those families reaching in their pocket to work with us in any capacity. And I think we do a pretty good job with that. So our biggest challenge, I say, is letting people know that we exist and we're a resource and all that. So anything you can do to help us there, we're grateful.
All right, well, we hit all the questions. We're good to go.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We'll send if you haven't booked the time with me, please do. We'll send the recording to everybody, and we'll be back in 2 weeks as always. And please feel free to share those links with your families.
Yeah, we hope to see your families either tonight or next Wednesday.
Send all the questions, counselor at collegeaidpro.com.
Yeah, and I put that here. I'll put that back in the chat real quick. I had put it in earlier, but counselor. Yeah, and we have Anne Marie as our superwoman running our support desk. So she'll be all over it, and she'll tag it and send it to whoever needs to help if needed.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
All
rest of your
right,
day.
have a good one.
Bye-bye.